Please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor and Councillors. My name is Anna Norris, and I am presenting today on behalf of myself as a resident of Ward 2. In 1898, in response to the overcrowded, smelly, and dangerous conditions of the emerging post-industrial revolution city, Ebenezer Howard published a book titled Tomorrow, A Peaceful Path to Real Reform, in which he described an environment he called a garden city, which was a small community of low-density residential houses integrating large tracts of park, garden, and agricultural land. The movement took off because everyone wants and deserves access to nature, and one of the positive effects of the Garden City movement was the trend towards large urban parks. But of course, the idea of living in the country and working in the city requires mass daily transit, and the bucolic winding streets of the Garden City aren't practical to service with a bus or a streetcar. The popularization of the automobile provided the only practical way of living in the type of community that we might as well call by the name it's now known by, the modern suburb. The ideal of sustainable community morphed into the nightmare of sprawl, where in many areas having a place to live just isn't enough if you don't also have a car, because access to employment and services is not an optional extra in modern life. The failure of the Garden City experiment illustrates that the housing and transportation are two sides of the same coin. A housing crisis is a transportation crisis, and vice versa. The well-intentioned history of car-based suburban living also illustrates that we are fighting an uphill battle against a long wait of history. It's not enough to technically have an option for transportation. In order to make any dent at all in the cultural, economic, health, and climate disasters wrought by the assumption of a car-based lifestyle, not driving a car needs to be faster, cheaper, more convenient, and more comfortable than driving. This takes on a particular urgency in a city where pedestrian deaths caused by drivers have climbed to a level frequently described as carnage. I know that Hamilton City Council does have a desire to make public transit the default way of getting around in Hamilton because, as previous delegates from the Council of Canadians mentioned, Mayor Horvath, as well as Councillors Kretsch, Twang, Clark, Kassar, and Wilson, all signed prior to the election a pledge to support the formation of a committee of council to examine how the city can make the HSR frequent, clean, and fare-free for all users. Council has the opportunity to act immediately in the right direction by adopting the Hamilton and District Labour Council's Care Fare initiative, in which fare-free public transit would be available to students from kindergarten to grade 12, riders 60 or older, anyone on Ontario Disability Support or Ontario Works, and all riders with disabilities. I hope to see Council adopt the Care Fare initiative in full this budget cycle, since ensuring that residents who may not have the option of driving are able to get around is morally necessary as well as economically sound. However, this is the bare minimum, which doesn't go very far towards the fundamental restructuring of society that we need. Frequent, fast, and fare-free for all users needs to be the ultimate goal of mass transit in Hamilton. So much for transit restructuring initiatives that cost money. We may well ask, what about transit restructuring initiatives that generate revenue? On that count, the lowest hanging fruit is downtown parking, which is not nearly expensive enough given the enormous costs that parking lots have to the walkability and air quality of a neighborhood. Congestion pricing for private vehicles is another, which has been used successfully in many large European cities, such as Stockholm, Gothenburg, Milan, and London, England, where a fee for city driving during peak hours immediately led to a 30% reduction in traffic congestion and a 38% increase in bus ridership within a single year. Tolls for private vehicle usage of city streets also opens the possibility of providing priority access by waiving tolls for service vehicles, car shares, and disabled drivers. This may all seem like far-fetched schemes compared to the current status quo, but what's really ludicrous is that we've passively accepted the inevitability of a physical environment where car ownership is a prerequisite for full and barrier-free access to economic and social life. I hope that the City Council is indeed a group of people who can look beyond the unfortunate weight of urban and suburban history to imagine a better way of life. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Anna, for your presentation. Are there any questions of our delegate? Councillor Alex Wilson, please.
Thank you so much, Anna. I think one of the points that you kept making throughout that is how valuable transit is for those who don't drive to get around and the freedom it operates. Do you have anything you'd say to folks who maybe have felt that experience, they're maybe of a different generation and have felt that freedom and experience through their car? We live in a different time now. There's a different reality. What does that freedom on transit look like?
Well, I am someone who, I actually moved to Hamilton recently, and I moved from an area that is actually far less serviced by public transit. So I will say that what transit we do have here, I personally really appreciate, and it's something that has really improved my quality of life, that I have the option, depending on my destination, to take public transit. And I would say that for me, as someone who's kind of a split, decide to drive the car versus taking the bus, when I'm able to leave the car at home, for me that's a huge relief. It's something that I don't have to worry about finding a parking spot for it, buying gas for it, obviously, worrying about the safety of the car itself, or my driving. And certainly for social events, if you are someone who wants to go to a restaurant or go to a bar in the evening, it's a huge deal to be able to get on the bus and know that you can have a drink at a restaurant and be safe getting home, which is certainly a concern in our city, which has had a lot of tragic pedestrian incidents.
Thank you, Anna. Supplemental? No? Thank you very much. Any further questions? Thank you very much for your attendance today. Our next speaker is item 6.17.